All right. All right. Hello, everybody. And welcome to this month's whole, I got to kind of navigate between two. This month's Girls Career Pitstop. My name is Candace Miles. I am the founder and CEO of No Gap Consulting, where I am on a mission to bridge the gap in representation when it comes to Black women who are Black women when it comes, well, excuse me, Black women when it is mid and senior level positions by creating space for Black millennials and Gen Z women new to leadership. And I want them to drive by hopping to the driver's seat of their career. But by doing that, I take them on a whole girls' career road trip. Hence, that's why we are doing a pit stop today, where we're not just chatting, but we are building a whole movement of authenticity, growth, and self-care for us by talking through our experiences that not necessarily are spoken about, but also too from our perspective as millennials. So today, I am hopping out of the driver's seat and allowing Miena Joseph, Senior Director of Ryan, Miena Joseph, hop into the driver's seat. But before that, let me actually tell you about my girl. Miena Joseph is a highly accomplished strategic leader boasting over 20 years of expertise across diverse sectors, including banking, mortgage, energy, and commercial tax. With a proven track record in project management, process improvement, quality assurance, and business risk controls, Miena consistently delivers outstanding outcomes aligned with strategic goals. Beyond her professional achievements, she is all about advocating for work-life balance, woman leadership, and mental health awareness. But in addition, y'all, she's a whole wife. She is a mother, and she is a first American generation from her country, Ghana.
That's right.
Did I do you
That's
justice?
right. You did me justice. Hold on now.
Okay.
I need to get someone that can do an intro for me like that often because Candace, you did that. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you. I think that this is definitely, I feel like this is a time of the year when it comes
Yeah,
to just self-care, especially in leadership. Like we are like on the last drive of trying
absolutely.
to push to the end of the year. And self-care, I think that definitely is put us on a back burner.
I agree. Coming toward the end of the year, you have your projects that you have to tie up loose ends with, you have the goals, you have your team, and then everything else at home. And then you have to start the planning for next year. So the expectation is that you tie up loose ends and then you start planning for next year all at the same time. So it is absolutely a time of the year that is not for the faint heart. I will definitely say that.
So let's talk about you are a millennial that is in a senior leadership role.
That's right.
What would you say, like, especially as we're getting into this time of the year, like the pressures that you have felt as a Black woman to go like
Mhm.
above and beyond the roles?
What what do I feel like as a Black woman? Can you repeat that again? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, no problem. Like the pressures that you like to share your thoughts on the pressures of like Black women that go above and beyond, like the times that we definitely feel like, especially being
Okay.
brand new to leadership,
Yes.
regardless if you are entry level or
Yes.
you are entering as a
Okay.
senior or mid-level, senior level position, like the
Mhm.
pressures we feel to go above and beyond.
Yeah, I think naturally, just across the board, when anyone comes into a new position, like we want to like bring our best self, right? We went through the journey of applying for the job, getting the job, and then now we're here. And so now the next step is, okay, I got to be the best. I got to show up and I got to do the job, right? I got to be the best version of myself. And so I feel like sometimes there's another layer of that because um, often, as a Black woman, we sometimes enter spaces where there's not a lot of people that look like us, right? And so you have that layer of things, and then you also have a layer of imposter syndrome, the anxiety, all of these things that can compound, not really being able to just embrace the fact that you deserve to be there and come into a situation. And so I just think a lot of the pressures that we have, a lot of it is self-imposed. We have to have enough confidence that the person that made the decision for us to be there is in a higher position, right? And they
Mhm.
knew what they were doing when they hired us. So outside of that and the divine appointment, um, it is a reason why we're there. So, I definitely think the pressures come from being self-imposed, and then thinking too much into, the obvious. Yes, I'm a woman, I'm a Black woman, and sometimes, quite often, I'm navigating spaces um, where there isn't a lot of representation. But I'm not there to highlight and necessarily just focus on that fact. I'm there for the same reason, to accomplish the same goals as my peers, and I focus on that because I deserve to be there, and I'm there, and I can do the job. So that is how I navigate expectations, as I focus on the task, and I just keep reminding myself that I deserve to be there.
I feel like that could be hard. I know for me personally, it was hard because, like you mentioned before, like being in the space and not necessarily seeing that representation in the room. I literally was
Mhm.
reading. I didn't get to read it completely, but Essence just posted today about like there being an influx when it comes to code switching. And that's something
Yes.
naturally that we do. And for those who don't know exactly what code switching is, I guess the most relatable example I can really think of is whenever you get a call from maybe a new employer that you had tried to get a job from, and they're calling you and you answer the phone. Hello. Yes, this is she.
Hi.
Hi. I do that so much. And I didn't really have like a name to state, to really state exactly articulate what that was until recently, whenever at my last job, they had like a panel where they talked about code switching and gave examples of that and how
Mhm.
to navigate those expectations whenever and stay true to yourself and not having to
Yeah.
code switch at the same time.
Absolutely. And I also think there's a fine line between code switching and professionalism, right? Because
Yeah.
informally, we can let our hair loose and we are who we are, but then tightening up and still being our authentic selves and being able to emulate that without having to water down who we are, like the presentation of who we are. I don't think
Mhm.
that's code switching, but I do think code switching is when you are not presenting your authentic self, right? You feel like you have to like act like someone else in order to be accepted. I think that's code switching for sure. Especially, yes, especially if you're conforming to the environment, and what your environment speaks like, looks like, acts like. If you're having to do that, for sure, that's code switching.
So would you say,
But you said, mhm, go ahead.
oh, go ahead.
No, so you mentioned that that you felt like it wasn't that it wasn't that easy. As far as like coming into and dealing with the pressures. What were your thoughts on? What were your some more your thoughts on that?
Yeah, like when I first got into leadership, like this has been over a decade ago when I first got in there. And like I remember my very first experience of having to coach somebody
Hmm.
and navigate through the pressure of I have to be this HBIC and and whip the chain because that's what I thought a boss was, kind of like what you self that self-imposed and not
Hmm.
really honestly, if I think about it now, it's imposter syndrome that I was doing because I was emulating what I thought a quote
Hmm.
unquote leader is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And it was hard. It was very hard for me because I did not even at that time have a mentor or even know that that thing even existed in the workplace. So it was a lot of trial and error, a whole lot of trial and error.
Man, that I definitely can understand that. I think me come when I started coming into people management and senior leadership, or just, higher leadership. My initial response to that wasn't to be like HBIC, right? My initial response was wanting to make sure I knew everything, right? And that is not a requirement for anybody. Like, that's insane to put that much pressure on yourself to feel like you have to know every single thing. Now, you need to know enough to be dangerous. You need to know enough to be effective, right? And you need to know enough to be excellent. You need to know enough to be able to guide and provide insight and guidance. But my approach was definitely feeling like I needed to know everything. And the anxiety for me came from, if I wasn't sure, not being able to articulate how to just navigate, go find the answer, not being able to articulate that. It was either I knew it or I wasn't worthy. And so it was that cycle of imposter syndrome. And it's just like, oh my gosh, I don't have it. Anxiety, I don't know everything. And so that was kind of like my intro to it as well.
You said something really good, because it made me think about like something that Dr. G said this summer, where she talked about personal, how people say, hey, what are your personal values, are your professional values? But there's no such thing, because when you look up values in a dictionary, values is just one word. It doesn't say professional values are personal. So like, even with you saying that, that anxiety that you just talked about, where do you think that may have came from or stemmed from, as like that impacted you as a leader?
It definitely starts from the beginning, to be honest. Like, I think like our whole journey in this life, every experience either teaches us something. It can create trauma. But I think it's just a culmination of like all of our experiences. And then they are, how we're nurtured, how we internalize, and some of that stuff, when it goes unchecked, sometimes it can manifest into, negative energy, like anxiety, imposter syndrome, negative thoughts, things like that. And so, I think it just starts from not being able to calibrate negative thoughts, not, mental health therapy, not having that to calibrate, not finding community, working in silos, suffering in silence, not saying it out loud. And I think a lot of that just culminates, and then it just becomes a ball of something. And sometimes we try to self-diagnose, we try to fix it ourselves, and our heart and our intention might be in the right place of trying to fix it. But sometimes it's necessary to find community or seek help with therapy to just redirect, unpack, and repack, because sometimes our closet gets shaken, our mindset gets shaken, and we're navigating these messy spaces, and we're trying our best to clean up, and sometimes we need a little help. So I think that's how it happens,
Yeah, it definitely does happen, like from the start, like you said. But the whole silo part is being that, for sure, for me, was something that I felt that I had to do be all, like you said earlier, like I had to know everything. I had to be the person that I wanted to be, the person that everybody came to. I wanted to be the person that also too that everybody trusted, and understand that, yes, because I am a leader, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm no longer, I'm no longer cool. I'm still their whole, the same person that I've always been with them. But being in leadership, and I don't know if it's just across the board, but that silo, like you feel like you're on this whole island alone, where you have where that community, if you don't necessarily know that you need community in the workplace, or even what that looks like, it can be very lonely and stressful, especially as a brand new leader.
Oh my gosh, that's good. That is so good. And I remember specifically encountering that. I remember getting into the position and having the self-imposed pressure of feeling like I had to show up, and feeling like the problems that I'm feeling, like everyone is so great at putting on their representatives. No one looks like they're affected. No one looks like they have anxiety. Everyone is, doing a great job. And, and so that you start to, it starts to play these mind games like, man, I'm the only one feeling what I'm feeling. And so you start to, you try to fix it, right? Like you're working in silos, you're trying to fix it in silos, and you're trying to pull from anything that can provide relief with whatever you're experiencing in your journey. And I found relief in when I finally had like moments of humanity with connecting with people, and people sharing that, man, I'm having a really hard time, or like just being vulnerable, and people just sharing their experiences and saying, humanizing themselves, and just being open and realizing like, man, it's not just me too. But someone, realizing that somebody had to be vulnerable and say it, almost gave me permission to feel okay to say it. But, it just started like a domino effect with me. And then when I started to ask those questions, be intentional about asking those questions, and like, what's your experience, and being intentional about making connections with, not just people that look like me, but especially folks that, once I learned more in my career, I was very intentional about finding those, people, Black women to share with. But getting out of those silos is so important, because it just compounds, it swirls, and it's just you end up being in this like vacuum, and you're not able to be your best self, and not operating in your best self, for sure.
Do you recall like a specific challenge that you went through that kind of opened that door? Like whether it's like in your senior role that you're in right now, or when you first got into leadership?
Yeah. Do I recall a time that sparked me coming out of my shell, my silo, that piece?
Like a certain situation that happened?
Yeah, you know what? For the most part, like initially, I would say for the majority of my career, I've done a great job navigating and finding my way, right? But there was a point in my career that stretched me, okay? Like stretched me. I feel like it was the wall that I had to hit to become, for me to be able to stretch and grow to who I am today. Like this was a point in my career that stretched me. And I think, coming into that situation, it was a great opportunity for myself. I was, very excited about that opportunity. And, I came in, and, the imposter took over. I'm at a new level, and, I'm with people that are tenured, and what do I, maybe they have something I don't have. And I just started to you start to tell yourself these lies that are just not true. Right. And then you start to say these things to yourself. And where I used to be someone that was unapologetic for providing my ideals, and being able to, have a seat at the table and do something with it. I started to become a recluse. I started to be the one that wanted to fall back and observe, and maybe say something on the side, or, and not just bring my best foot forward. And that just continued to snowball through that experience. I wasn't my best self in that space. And although throughout that journey, there were people I encountered in that space that were compassionate and could recognize that, I think because they went through that personally and they could recognize that. For the most part, I think me having to fall, me having to, lose my legs, me having to be resilient and claw my way back through those situations. Like I literally had to hit rock bottom, in the point where I had to force myself to do it, or there were people who were competing and gunning for my downfall because they, for whatever reason, unprovoked, I had to challenge myself and be resilient through that situation, and come out of it, for sure. So yeah, I think, I don't want to be too specific on where, but yeah, I definitely was very challenged in that place. And it was a specific incident where someone wanted my role, someone wanted to take, and I had to show up. It was either show up or be eaten, and I had to show up. And it was at that time where I told myself I would never ever allow myself to be in a position where someone just, they don't understand me, they don't see me, right?
Yeah.
I will never put my story or my narrative in the hands of someone else. I will make sure that I speak my narrative and I am very clear about my intentions. And I will be intentional about being responsible for my own success. And that's how I was able to navigate that.
Yeah. And I think like one thing that you definitely just said was like about creating your own narrative. And I'll definitely talk about this a little bit more next month.
Mhm.
I recall like recently, like for me personally, when it came to basically me getting some feedback from one of my employees. And it was something that was uniquely because I actually inherited this employee that was already an issue whenever my peer decided to leave. And
Okay.
so now I'm in this situation where my job is on the line. But in reality, the uniqueness of it is that because my counterpart, my old coworker didn't do exactly what they were supposed to do and exit that person out of there, now that was
Mhm.
put on me. So how do I
Oh.
and then, and I sat there and I was like, well, how do I navigate through this? Because ultimately I'm coming up to this person trying, doing all these different things to code switch in a sense to coach them in a way that they can receive it. But in the sense of that, they already had their mind made up as far as like what leadership was. And so it's
Mm.
very unique because I constantly see that we as Black women, we do quote unquote get the problem kids. People that don't know that, we in leadership say that. But we get the ones that we have to either coach up or coach out, and it's unfortunate because it puts us in this situation where now that whole angry Black woman that that we are aggressive. Let me just say that too. When it comes to us having to actually do that, is now placed upon us. So then
Mhm, mhm.
it's a
The
domino effect.
optics.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because you got surveys that come out and now these surveys they're putting, and it's just a domino
Right.
effect. What I think a lot of people don't understand in leadership that we have to actually go through and manage through all of that on top of managing people. But
Absolutely.
that,
And
oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. Oh no, I was just gonna say like I remember like sitting in my last one of my one-on-ones with my boss, and I broke down crying.
Wow.
I 100% broke down crying
Oh.
because it was like I was at my breaking point. Because here it is, I have to, as those silent expectations for us to show up, to always be resilient.
Mhm,
No, I am suffering right now, and no
mhm,
one is
mhm.
here throwing out any type of lifesaver to help me.
So I have a question with that, because I mean, you stated this expectation for us to show up and perform. Do you feel like any of that could have been mitigated um, by being more vocal about concerns or expectations? Did you feel like you had a clear understanding of your expectations? Did you feel like you were set up for success, or was it a situation where you were just promoted and it was like figure it out? How did you come into that role, and do you feel like there was anything that you could have done to mitigate it, like before you got overwhelmed? Is there anything that you feel like you could have done?
So this one, I came into the role like I already had the tenure. Now, because I was new to the organization, um, I felt like because I had the tenure behind me, that I didn't necessarily need to speak up. Like I didn't recognize, hey, these are smoke signals going off right now. Candace,
Okay.
this is your yellow flags that you need to bring in and start looping in until it was a full on fire. And it was like, hey, I just want to let you know with this person, it's been up and down. You know what I'm saying? But
Right.
it's that, like I said, it's that expectation, like, no, I got this, I can handle this. But in reality, I needed to go through, like, I needed to have like that supportive system where I had that mentor to help me and navigate through that, to understand like how I need to CYA myself.
Absolutely. It's the CYA, it's the how to say it, right? Because you know what you want to say, but it's the how do I say this? Not necessarily in the way to code switch, but it's how do I, it's being able to navigate your emotions and still be able to effectively communicate without losing the message, and that was like my point, coming to points of frustration of how do I navigate, how do I effectively communicate what I'm feeling, without circumventing any of what my experience is, and being able, and how do I translate that without coming off emotional, right? Without coming off aggressive. How do I do that and effectively communicate? And that itself, becomes a lot of anxiety. But to your point, finding someone that you can trust enough to help navigate those waters was 100% what helped me navigate those spaces. Because I'm like, in my head, I'm like, okay, I think this is the way to say it. And I think I'm just gonna have to say it in this way.
Yeah.
But but that may not be the best way to say it, but I need to say it. But wanting to still be in a space where you're respected, or communicating with people that may have different ways of conflict resolution from culturally, right? So that is also another layer, because you and I culturally can probably go through conflict resolution in a way that from someone that is not Black, they may look at it as, man, like, I don't know, but to someone, and so that style of communication might, might be intimidating to someone else. But so being aware, right, and conscious of the audience or the person, that I'm needing to communicate with is something that I'm constantly trying to be conscious of, not to code switch, not to minimize who I am, but I want to be able to have an effective dialogue. And so it was a mentor that was able to help me navigate those conversations, because I know the way Miena wants to say it, right? But is that the best way to say it? That's what's important.
I think that's the part is, yeah, when I finally got my mentor, like that was the thing where she would be like, okay, Candace, now let's take the emotion out of it. What are the facts?
Right.
But you have to have that, mentor where you feel that you're psychologically safe to be yourself and to have those conversations, to vent without that any judgment. And it helps you to, at least for me, to take off my superwoman cape. Like, I don't need to be all to do everything, and understanding that as a leader, if we're not okay, our team feels that. And how do we, like, and when it comes to it, like recognizing when like I told you earlier, when the whole smoke signals and everything is going off, it may not necessarily be for a particular situation, but also to take an account for ourselves and for our own personal self-care, because we have to, at some point, put ourselves first.
Yeah.
How do you think, like, for you, I don't know if for you, when it comes to like that superwoman cape, like how do you take that off? How do you shut down the laptop and say, I am done for the day? There is nothing else for me to have to do. And this can wait till tomorrow.
Oh, yes. It took time, honestly, and it took time. It took people who, because sometimes I find solitude, and not solitude, but I I like being a professional. I like being able to affect change. I take a lot of pride in my work. So I tend to pour a lot into my job. But it's also important to like unplug and do self-care. And it really took the people who love me and I share space with and share life with to really bring awareness to how much it was like impeding into my personal life because the balance wasn't there, right? But then also I started to recognize exhaustion and burnout. And I really didn't, even though I heard those concepts and I know what it is, but like for me, I've been able to like, I'm high performing, right? I'm high performing um, when I'm anxious, when I feel these things, I become like I overperform. Like I just it drives me, right? And so, but the symptoms of exhaustion, I just really didn't recognize like that's what I was feeling. And it's just like, man, like you come to work and I'm just not my bliss. I'm like, why is it taking me 10 minutes to send this email? Like I've been looking at the screen for 10 minutes, like what is going on? And it's just kind of like recognizing like in myself and then people, within my village and in my home, recognizing that as well, to bring that to my awareness. And it was just kind of like, whoa, like I need to create space for rest. I need to create space for family and my friends. I need to create space. And so when I started to recognize, I first started with, you know, um, setting meetings. I would set meetings on my calendar, to eat, set meetings on my calendar to
Lunch, break.
right, break and to do certain things for myself. Like I would create space for that. And then also, you know, I try to challenge myself to remove the fear of feeling like I have to work by the minute. We're not paid by the minute. So it is okay to create space to go to breakfast or to do the thing. And it's okay. Like my first meeting doesn't start till 10. You know what? I'm gonna take a little time this morning, And so it's just recognizing that like stopping and slowing down and realizing like time is flying and creating space. And so creating space for me, once I started to understand and recognize it, was being very clear, especially when there was upcoming things, but being very clear with my boss, my peers, my team. Hey, I'm going to be off during this time. I will not be available during this time. And turning my phone off. And actually turning my phone off. It was unplugging. And my husband would do at times, closing the laptop, close it. And it is just creating the space to like be away. So that's definitely how it's really self-awareness. Like that's the big part right there, is the self-awareness, is of knowing that you are bleeding time.
Yeah. And honestly, like that was something, being like a brand new leader, that I had no idea about when it came to just being self-aware of those signs that pop up. I remember when I first got into leadership, maybe my year two or so, or maybe on the cuff of it, but I was sitting there, I was supervisor, and then I was traveling over to TJ over here, that's in San Diego, it's Tijuana, Mexico, to train up our partners that were over there. But I was also too in a relationship where we moved in together, and now I became an instant bonus mom. And now it was balancing the whole act of, oh, I got to pick up this kid. Now I got to make dinner, but then also too I found myself going in extra early in order to do more. But it doesn't really matter, we can't do it all in one day. And I think that's the misconception when it comes to leaders, that you got to get everything done, because that list, it just continues to grow every day. You just got to figure out exactly, hey,
it's
these are
be there.
You get exactly. It's going to be there. Like it's absolutely going to be there. And I don't necessarily need to do all 20 of these items today. And if my boss says something, when I got more tenure in my role as a leader, I used to rebuttal all the time. Also send me something. Hey, is this something that what is the deadline for this to get done? That would be my constant rebuttal. What that, especially when she didn't put anything in there, like to say, hey, here's the deadline. Okay, when do you need this done? Okay, I can get this to you by here. Because without even having words to it, I know it's like very common right now where people are like, hey, this is a boundary. I would set it a boundary to say, hey, I got stuff that I need to do, and I'm gonna do this ask for you. And it's okay. I think too, as brand new leaders, we think that we can't say that to our boss. We can't set those boundaries for whatever reason that is, but we
It is
just
not
have that
true.
fear.
Yeah,
They
it's so not true.
appreciate that. I'm pretty sure you appreciate that from like your people.
I do. I do. And I'm also intentional about asking those questions about capacity. You know, I'd never want to be the leader that's just delegating and just putting stuff on people's plate. I want to be very intentional about that. Now, don't get twisted. I'm aware of people's capacity. So you're not going to tell me you don't get capacity and you only got, I know what's going on, but before, if someone is saying they don't have capacity, but from a project perspective, you have capacity. Okay, help me unpack. Like, what else is it? Is there something else going on? What's going on? And then those are other factors. Being in servant leadership that you take into account. There may be seasons that your employees go to recognize that although technically they may be at 50% capacity, they may be in a season where there's another 40% of mental capacity that's just not there right now, right? And so then that's where you invest that non-business capacity in your employee, especially if they're worth, I'm gonna say worthy, but that's where you make the decision to invest that extra capacity or to allow that extra capacity so they can navigate those spaces, navigate that season that they're in. So the awareness with the team is important. Yeah.
So because their capacity, have you ever had the whole rebuttal, oh, I don't like being micromanaged?
No, because I don't want to micromanage. I'm very much so a end results person. I am okay, here's the objectives. I'm a level. Here's what you need to be set up for success. Let me set up the framework. Let me have my meeting to level set expectations. Everyone ask any questions. Let me make sure you know exactly what you need to do to be successful before we start. Are you good? Are you good? We're good. All right. At any time that you're not good, hit me up. Right. And then from between there, I always create some type of milestone before something is due. To do checks and balances, of course, the status updates here and there, but my expectation for my employees is that they're professionals, they're grown, they can self-manage their time. Everyone is not the same. I understand that, but I really focus on the end result and the preparation for the end result. So for me, micromanaging is out. No, I don't have the capacity and time for that. I don't want to do it. I don't like it. It's a no. Yeah, it's a no. But the expectations are there. And if I find that an initiative is falling behind, then it's gauging that employee to understand, okay, are we able to right side this? And if it's no, then a little pressure has to come in, either, me helping, to jump in, which I don't want that. Okay. I have a lot on my plate. So me having to jump in is not the desire. Or it is just, putting a little pressure to get through the finish line. And that's where micromanaging can insert in critical times, but no, it's a no for me. No.
That whole micromanaging, I think people would think that we love to do that. Like as leaders, that we love. Like, no, I don't. I definitely, like, when I get new people, that used to be my whole thing, and say, hey, I am not a micromanager. I am pretty laid back. As long as you do your work, listen, work is done, we have fun. Now, if you start slipping I always say I don't micromanage unless you make me micromanage you. because
Facts.
it's not me. It's something that you're not adhering to. And now it has forced me to micromanage.
Exactly. I'm very aware of like delivery timelines, right? And then quality. So, in project management, it's like scope, time, cost, quality. So when one of those are failing, it affects everything else in terms of like the quality and the delivery of a project. So I try to be very not self-aware, but I try to be very aware of like the projects in my portfolio to know when I need to step in. But outside of that, I really allow my team to self-manage the projects and their time. I never, ever want my team to ever feel like they have to choose between taking their kid, going to their kids, Mother's Day breakfast, and having to show up work right at 9 o'clock. I never want my team to feel like that. I never want to manage my team like that. I just don't want that type of energy in my space. Self-manage your time. I'm not saying work 2 hours a day, but what I am saying is go have lunch with your kid, you know, go to yoga. Okay. Take an extra hour and have a 2 hour nap in the middle. Do whatever you need to do to be well and show up. Right. Because when you're here, the expectations are what they are. But I never want my team to feel like that. And I'm blessed now to be in an environment where I work for leaders that also cultivate that type of environment where it's not, by the minute, where are you? Where are you? Where are you? It's, it's really project based, and we really care about the quality of a work and the production more than time, more than anything.
So, like with you saying that, because I know, especially with COVID, and now where we're at, that definitely was something, a space that we created, and to me, um, understood more than ever for me. Self-aware of like the signals, like you said, like if someone is falling behind, okay, why are you falling behind?
Mm-hmm.
But from an organization standpoint, do you think it's important for them to, or do you think it's important for them to actually create those supportive environments where Black women leaders can thrive?
Absolutely. I think, and I may get flack or slack for this, but I try not to look at it from yes, I am a Black woman, right? I'm a Black woman in leadership. I have my experiences that are very specific to who I am and what I am. There's no circumventing my human experience in this world or in my profession. But like what I really feel like is going to create the best space for me to thrive as a leader is a space where leadership is transparent. Is in a space where I'm able to effectively communicate or be able to communicate my thoughts, my gripes, my concerns, and they're heard and acknowledged. And not just, they're heard and acknowledged for me being able to create spaces, create fellowship for people who look like me, and it's not ill accepted or looked at weird. It's embraced and encouraged. I want to be in spaces like that, right? I want to be in spaces where it's okay to be authentically myself, and I don't have to conform to anything else. And so, does that look like creating spaces for Black women? Necessarily, not necessarily, but I have been in environments where they had the Black woman, the women's group, they had the Black group, they had the Black women's group, but the place was still toxic, right? And so I don't equate creating spaces to a diverse environment. I really think it starts with leadership that is willing to meet the people where they are, that's willing to listen and hear our feedback, whether it's anonymous or it's direct, but being able to hear these things and take action on it. And again, I have to say, I'm working in an organization that does value that does hear the gripes of the people, whether it's based on a diversity issue, a social issue, a professional issue, and they take those into consideration and make swift action, I can appreciate that. I love that environment, and I think that's what's required for your people, and especially your leaders to thrive. I mean, imagine having a Bentley and not being able to drive it because, like imagine.
Yeah.
And so I feel that, create the space for, create, because they don't want you to be, because your Bentley doesn't want you to come in. I'm a Bentley, honey. And I want to be able to drive long distances for my company. I want to be able to do that for my team. And the only way that I can allow, and do that is to be in a safe environment, or to feel like I'm in a safe environment to thrive, and be myself. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like, have you heard of DISC?
DISC.
It's like
No.
a personality assessment. It's like free. I know like at my last
Oh, I heard
organization,
some
I
other
was
ones.
at, yeah,
Okay.
I feel like some type of assessment, like personality assessment, I feel
Okay.
that would go a long way to understand, because what you said, like being transparent, being direct, like that reminded me completely of like a D personality, where that's where you appreciate that type of communication, that type of
Mm-hmm.
structure that's there. And for me, like I feel like organizations should actually implement that so they know exactly, okay, how many people do we have here? Okay, we have multiple
Mm-hmm.
people that are in this personality. How do we communicate? How do we roll out these initiatives? How do we create that
Yes.
space to have not just I mean, DE&I is there, but we all know that there's been a decline since 2020 when that all
Mm-hmm.
happened. But how do we really focus on the I portion of it? How do we become inclusive to adapt everybody, not just, our field that we are adapting. I think Dr. G actually stated, like, we got to teach people how to coach us sometimes. And that's the same thing
Mm-hmm.
as, like, when it comes to organizations. You have diversity everywhere. People
That's
of
right.
different backgrounds, and it doesn't matter. Me and you could have came from the same background. Me and someone else who doesn't look like me could have came from the same exact hometown, but had different experiences. It's all about like figuring out, especially as the older generation is beginning to age out and the new generation is coming in. Diversity is something very huge,
Mm-hmm.
and to
Absolutely.
adapt to what that looks like, and giving like setting the foundation for that, because we're not letting these robots,
Absolutely.
but that's a whole different story.
I know.
I said we're
This
not letting these
story
AI
about
robots.
this AI robot.
We're not letting
That's
these AI robots come in and replace us.
yeah. It's a no. Yes, it's a definite no. No, we're not doing that. No. That is too funny. That is
Girl.
too funny. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, that is too funny. For everyone, there is what is it? An
It's
AI.
it's an AI robot that a organization had. It's an experimental CEO that an organization appointed this AI robot to be the CEO of the company. It is a Black woman who is the robot, but she works 24/7, and her name is Mika. So it was a lot of thoughts around that, because I do know, like, when it comes to AI, they've talked about. I feel like Elon Musk actually mentioned it, and I know, like, with him, there are a lot of things that he say that like really do come true, but he did talk about like humans not really needing to work or anything like that, and they like by 2060 or something. But it's just very interesting of
Yeah.
trying to replace the humanistic part, because then what are we going to do?
Right.
But that's a whole
Right.
different story.
That is. That's a whole different part. Let's put it on the
That's a
list.
whole different story. So I guess, like, to close us out here, what are some self-care tips that you have actually implemented as a leader to help you keep the balance?
Oh, that's a good question. I would definitely say I'm a big advocate for mental health and therapy. I'm gonna say it till my dying day. But I definitely think therapy is necessary, not just to like, you know, navigate trauma and just like all the negative parts of our life, but like therapy is also good just to center, be able to understand what triggers you, being able to understand other people, being able to do all of that. And even when things are well, I still think therapy is necessary. We go to the car dealership to get a tune up on our car when we hit a certain mileage, right? And maybe nothing, not necessarily something's wrong, but when we hit a certain mileage, we still go and get our oil changes and do all those things. And I feel like we still need to do that same self-care mentally. So I'm always going to be a big advocate when it comes to therapy and just mental health and centering or whatnot. I also think it's important for I also think it's important to um, the obvious, eat well and working out, and that type of thing. That's necessary as well. And especially as we get older, I am notorious for setting the time to eat and breezing right through it. Do you have any time today? Oh, you know what? We can do a work lunch, or yeah, just take that time. No, set the boundaries. No is a complete sentence. Period. You don't need to explain. It is your time. You don't owe anybody that time. And so it's just really being intentional about carving at the time and sticking to it. So setting those boundaries and sticking to it, advocating for yourself, and knowing that if you don't do it for yourself, um, no one else is responsible, for you. You do it. You have to do it. You may have people that may have your back. But at the end of the day, you are responsible for getting yourself there. So create the space and take your time. How many times have we got to the end of the year and we are panicking on how we're going to, have our roll over? We can't roll over our time and all of these things. How do we do that? So take the time off, even if you don't have any plans. Take the time off to unwind and load. So that's what I would say.
The last one, I'm going to 100% agree with you on that. I just remember like at one organization I was with, it was a lot of brand new leaders. And I remember going around and saying, hey, okay, do you want Thanksgiving, Christmas, or New Year's Eve? And a lot of them were like, oh, none. What? You don't want any? No, let me bring a little bit of game for you to let you know as a leader, you need to spend time, especially that time of year is like spend time with your family. Spend time with your friends, whatever the case is, but get away from here because the hustle and bustle is going to start at the very beginning of the year. And this is like the downtime that we get as leaders as we start closing out the year.
But no, you're absolutely right. The downtime is good. And then my mind used to switch and say, oh, this is great admin time. No. This is the time where I need to slow down too and embrace, and embrace that, outside of the closing the projects and all that burn, but there's still like a few weeks of downtime that I should embrace, that I've learned to embrace a little bit better. So,
yeah, I think for me, especially as I'm getting older, for sure, the food. I've always been, I was an athlete growing up. So working out has always been something that I've done. Just now, I understand like I need that. That's my mental break is by going to the gym, working out. So I don't necessarily answer any type of messages or anything like that before 8 o'clock, unless it's an absolute emergency. I remember my team used to text me like because I'm here on the West Coast, so I had team members on the East Coast. Even whenever I was at one organization, they used to text me at like 4 o'clock in the morning here, expecting a response.
No, we're not doing that. It's okay.
No,
it's okay.
And but I had to learn to say no with doing that and be okay and not feel guilty for not responding. It's that part. Not feel guilty for not responding because I want to, but if I do that, now I'm creating this habit of you thinking that you could just message me 24/7 and I'm going to respond.
Yeah, that not feeling guilty part is important. And we just got to remember that we're our responsibility in all of this is being able to effectively communicate well, right?
Yeah,
Saying it, communicating and effectively communicating it well, but we're not responsible so much for how it's received and interpreted, right? So if we're doing our best to communicate well, then everything else should fall in place. But how someone receives that, they're operating on their own things. So,
hmm
we're not responsible for how when someone receives it, but we just need to be responsible for that effective communication so we can have that balance in our lives, so we can push back and say no, and then leave it there.
yeah,
Disconnect from the feeling of being responsible for someone accepting it. It doesn't matter. You say you do what you got to do and you walk away. It's not your business what they're thinking. Let it go.
yeah.
Right?
Sometimes I used to be like, when I first got into doing that, I used to like put my phone down in a different
Uh-huh.
other room so I don't have to see the message come in or the response that I knew I had to like respond back to it. But that all in itself was me getting, prepared, being equipping myself to have those type of conversations. I think those courageous conversations are necessarily like a skill that a lot of leaders don't necessarily feel comfortable with, because you're having to say no or do something that you necessarily don't have anything to back you up.
Mhm.
Because sometimes we'll say, hey, this is the reason why, here are the facts. But when you don't, it's hard to navigate through that.
Facts.
But yeah, self-care, balancing, especially brand new leaders. Listen, when I say this, you are speaking to with I can't remember the guy's name from Nike that was in our class. um I cannot remember his name, but you know what, I saw him on Ready to Love. I meant to send that to the group to let everybody know. So he's
Oh,
on there as a
yeah.
friend. But yeah, but like how he had basically he had mentioned about, you know what, Ready to Love totally threw me off, threw my whole thought off. It
About
totally
that. It's fine.
girl,
You're right. Ready to love
girl,
is it.
girl. That's my show. That is my
That
guilty pleasure
is.
show.
But you were saying senior leaders, it's important that they, especially new leaders, to prioritize self-care. It's super important. I think you were going into that, but you're absolutely right. I guess for me, like the biggest takeaway is, as you move up, the tactical work um, may decrease, meaning you might not be doing the actual busy work of the every day, but the requirement to be strategic minded, provide direction, meet your people where they are, create the
Mhm.
framework for your team to be successful and to be optimal at their tactical jobs. That part is important, and then you get to a level of politics. So know what your boundaries are coming in and stick to them and be unrelentless about creating space for rest,
Yeah,
because it's important. Yes, the
yeah,
burnout is real.
yeah. And I think that's where I was going with that, because he had mentioned his story about him saying no. And I thought that
Mhm.
was very bold of him, especially because he was in his early 20s or mid 20s
Yes.
saying that. And I was like,
I
that's
was
very
like,
bold.
never back then. Yes. Never. I was like, you? Yeah. I would never.
I couldn't even utter the words. It's like, yes, yes, I'll do that. Okay, yes, I wouldn't. No, I'm not doing that.
Right.
I really figured that out. All right. But this has been great. Thank you, because like I said, when it comes to self-care, when it comes to just balancing, especially as brand new leaders, that's where I was going with that. It's important to create that habit now versus to try to create it later. Not to say that you can't do it, but the way that you set your tone as a brand new leader, that's going to be the trajectory of the type of leader that you become. It's going to give you the
Absolutely.
space the balance that you need, even for you to be more comfortable with having those conversations. With The Art of No, that's definitely a great book for people to read if you haven't.
Mhm.
But it's really good for you to understand, as a leader, you're good, but you also have to be good to yourself. And you can't be
Mhm.
good to yourself if you're not taking care of yourself.
That's right. And be gentle with yourself. It's okay to be
Compassion.
imperfect. Compassion. Yeah.
Yes.
We extend it to everyone else but ourselves. So be
Yes.
gentle with it. Yes.
Yes, you're learning. You're learning.
That's right. And it's never
It's
going
a
to
journey.
stop.
Like you said,
That's right.
it's a marathon, not a sprint.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Thank you again for joining. Thank you, everybody else, for joining in.
Absolutely.
I know it's happened so quick. I was
Like,
like, dang, the
man,
hour
it's
went
8
by so
o'clock
quick.
already. My little
Girl,
one
well,
is probably like, where's my mama? I ain't seen her yet. I've been hiding because it is over when the little one sees me. So,
all right, you guys. I will be having another monthly chat next month, December 20th, same time, 5 o'clock. I'll start posting that where I am going to talk about work trauma. Will be a panel of us actually who have actually experienced work trauma as Black women throughout this year in different industries. Ironically, that's pretty crazy, but it just lets you know the silver lining is that it just doesn't happen in one industry, it happens in other industries. But other than that, you guys keep driving and I will see you later.
awesome. Have a good night.
Night.